Hello everyone and welcome back. In this video we're going to be looking at how you can improve your vocabulary in your writing tasks. So obviously, as with all of the other videos that I've done, different teachers teach things in different ways, and this is just one method that you can use. The most important thing you need to remember is to use the technique that works best for you, because that's what's going to count in the exam. So if we're looking at the writing mark scheme, again we've got the two sides. We've got the communicating and organising, and then we've got the writing accurately. We're going to be focusing on this one today and looking at how we can use a wide range of vocabulary with precision and thinking about conveying precise meaning with our vocabulary. The whole point of language is to communicate, and that's what you really need to remember when you're writing. And a lot of people, when they are writing, will tend to, in order to try and get those higher marks, pick vocabulary that isn't necessarily suited to purpose, but it's just more complicated than what they would use normally. And that's not what we're looking for here. We're looking for using a wide range of vocabulary, so perhaps using words that you're not used to using in your everyday life, but most importantly, picking words that are appropriate to the task that you're actually completing. So we're going to be focusing on this one today, this idea of vocabulary. And as I said, we're going to be looking at what is appropriate to purpose. So if we think right back to purpose, audience, format and tone, these will help you with everything here. So it'll help you with absolutely everything. It will help you think about how you structure your sentences, help you think about the different sentence openings you may use, the different sentence types and where they're going to be used, and the word choices that you make. So by thinking about that purpose, audience, format and tone, then you are going to give yourself the best possible chance to get those marks about getting things that are appropriate for purpose. So what do I mean about this, and how can we actually think about doing this in our writing and getting kind of the tools necessary to then use in the exam? Well, let's start out with what I like to call grey words. So this is a grey word, this is happy. Now it's called a grey word because it doesn't matter if you're quite happy or if you're very happy, you can use happy to describe that. And in certain contexts, the word happy is great and it's certainly the best word to be used. But in a lot of contexts, it's not. And in terms of the exam and for the exam, you need to think about the precise meaning that you are conveying. And the word happy isn't precise because quite happy makes sense and very happy makes sense. So when you're communicating, we don't know if you mean this one, if you mean this one, or if you mean anything in between. And there's lots of words out there like that. And there's lots of words that we will use in everyday language that are not precise. And as I said, in some cases that's really important. So for example, if you were writing a screenplay, you'd want to use general language because it's up to the actor to make the decision as to how happy or sad or angry they might be. If you were writing something that deliberately needed to be left open to interpretation, then you might use some more general or ambiguous language. But we want to convey precise meaning. So an exercise that you can do and an exercise that you can try with different vocabulary is this one, making word rainbows. So we've got our idea of quite happy and we've got our idea of very happy. Now, there are lots of other words that also mean happy, but they mean different levels of happy. So you can see here I've started to mind map just a whole bunch of ideas in this box at the bottom here that mean happy. So we've got delighted, gleeful, over the moon, so we've got some phrases in there as well as words. And then what I've started to do is I've started to create a spectrum. So rather than using and just having this grey word, we've got a spectrum of words that all mean roughly the same thing. So I've got content and satisfied over in the quite happy corner. I'd probably move over the moon over here, and I'd move ecstatic definitely over here. Gleeful not so far, it would probably go by here. And I'm going to build it up. So if you did this and if you created one of these at home, then what you will end up with is starting to put the words around. I've colour coded them to go with the spectrum, but you will end up with something that looks a bit like this. And what this does is it tells me that if I want to express that someone is quite happy, these are the kinds of words I want to be using. If I want to express that someone is really happy, these are the kinds of words I need to be using. Now, some of these, again, are going to be open to interpretation. Someone may feel that delighted is, means perhaps being slightly more happy than being ecstatic. But by doing this, you can create more of a sense of precision in terms of the words that you use. And what is good about this is that now you've got all these words here that mean happy, but not only that, if you're talking about someone being quite happy, you're going to use these ones, and if you're talking about someone being very happy, these ones, and if you're talking about someone being kind of in the middle, then you can use these ones here. So immediately you've got that idea of precise meaning and creating that precise meaning through your word choices, which is a band 4 or band 5 skill. So these are some of the other words that you could have a think about. So you could do other emotions, things like sad, you could do angry, and you could do something like scared. Now these are really useful for things like narrative or thinking about thoughts and feelings, because doing this kind of thing also helps you with the reading questions, especially when it comes to things like talking about thoughts and feelings or how the writer shows something, because you understanding how extreme that emotion or the sense of that word, that kind of sense of them putting that across through their language choices will help you interpret and analyse that language in more detail. Other words, just different adjectives. So we've got things like big and small. You could also do something like good and bad. And they're really useful for things like persuasive writing, because quite often the word good or bad would not be used, but loads of other words that mean the same thing would be, and you need to understand whether they mean quite good or very good, or quite bad and very bad. Again, something like old or young. And again, if we're looking at some kind of character description, that would be really useful to have as well, because lots of these kinds of words, especially to do with characters, carry these connotations. And you could also look with things like verbs. So walked. Well, there's lots of different ways of saying walked that could imply moods, could imply tones, could imply some kind of atmosphere. So having an idea of, say, 10 or so words that mean walked but actually have other connotations, other meanings as well, can again help you in the reading section, and then when you come to write in your writing section as well. Then we've got things like said. Now said is one that crops up a lot. There's hundreds of words out there that mean said, and that can really tell you about the relationship between a character. It can tell you the kind of character that you're looking at. And again, really useful for reading or writing. And then you can go for more abstract things like love. So how would love be described, or like, how would like be described, and what kind of love is being expressed through those word choices. So if I was revising at this point, I'd create these little word spectrums, and by having that scale almost of word choices, I've got myself a whole bank of vocabulary to use in the writing sections, but also revising language in preparation for the reading section, because the two are intrinsically linked. And remember, as well as clear communication, one of the key things is diversity. So you want to make sure that your writing is diverse. So you don't necessarily want to be picking things that are always from the red section of the spectrum. You don't just want things from here, you want things from either end and all the bits in the middle as well, because then that shows that you understand almost the scales of language. And we definitely don't want a lot of grey words. One or two maybe, but if you keep on throwing in those grey words, your communication is not clear. And the communication is really important, because that's the main reason that we learn and use language. So hopefully that exercise will help you in improving your vocabulary, but also thinking about the precise meaning that you want to convey, because there's no point in learning 100 words that are really fancy if none of them are going to be useful to the task that you're actually going to complete. So that hopefully will tick off the vocabulary section of these writing videos. I will link a BBC Bite Size link down below that it's got a few more exercises on it. And as well as that, I'll link a couple of images that are useful in terms of thinking about language and different words you can use instead of these grey words that I've talked about. There are lots of revision activities as well that I've got linked onto a Padlet, so I'll also link that down below, and I will see you in the next one.